Okay, so what we have here is the adapter brackets to get the Meanwell power supply in the Ender 5 Plus case. So working off something we used before, these are 4mm. Excuse me, M4. That's an M4 T-nut, and you would think it would be real easy to just slide that in there and put the screw in, but few things to watch out for that'll create a problem for you. The first thing you want to do is make sure you have a clean print and no strings. So if you look on this one, some strings, it's not the prettiest print. I was surprised my linear left this edge right here. So this morning I looked at that printer, and the top carriage on the X, the screws were loose on it. The whole thing was wobbling. So that should go away. That printer is really a good printer, so that was shocking when I saw that. Also, I should have printed this at 205 and I printed it at 208. And I believe that made for a slight stringing problem here. Very cobweb, very minor. So if you get that, just take your lighter to it. Just carve, pull out everything you can, and take a lighter and melt any of those cobwebs, because those cobwebs will get in between the threads, and as it'll create friction, it'll get hot and it'll melt the filament from the friction of the screw, and then it works like Loctite. It'll cool and that thing's glued on there. So when you put these on, first we'll talk about what screws you need. So you need your T-nut, and then the screw you're actually going to want to use is going to be 15mm. So that's the screw that's actually going to hold it to the body of the case. And after you slide your T-nut in there, it needs to be set. There's an indent, it needs to be pulled up. Now when you do this, don't use a screw that goes all the way through. So put a washer on this or something, or use a shorter one. I'll make this hole bigger, but what can happen is you can get a little bit of filament on the end of the screw when you screw it in, and then when you try to back it out, done. Once that gets stuck, the whole part's gone. You might even lose the screw in the T-nut unless you cut it apart. But if that does happen to you and you want to save it, heat it up, because the filament has it basically Loctited in there. Anyway, all right, carrying on. Slide your T-nut in there. Make sure it's straight, right? Look in the hole. If you want to carefully, you can use an Allen wrench and just very carefully get it so it's straight, so when you look down in there, the threads will hit right through. Then you want to screw down, and like I said, what I would use is basically, and I would use this smaller screw, which is this one's a 12. Yeah, 12. So if you use this one, when you tighten it down, it won't go all the way. Well, it will a little bit, won't it? But you can put a washer on there. What you want to do is put your screw in. Also clean out this hole right here before you start. Put the screw in, long one, work it back and forth, getting over extrusion out of there. So what you're going to do is you want to get your screw started. Now granted, this is already pulled up, so your screw will be more towards the back wall over here. Screw this in, and like I said, if you get resistance, any kind of resistance, stop, unscrew. You can even put a little oil on this if you want to, but when you get it right there, tighten until you pull it up. If you look at a T-nut, has a little square on the top, little square indent right here around the threads, 1mm deep. that actually gets pulled up into the plastic, and what that's going to do is hold it, that kind of helps hold it in place after we take this screw out. So now that's in place, and we can use that as the threads when we come down through the case into this. Alright, so like I said, it just seems like it would be super simple and didn't need any explaining. Got to be clean, and don't fight it. If it should screw in really easy, and if it doesn't, you need to stop, or you're going to get it stuck and have to reprint your part. Alright, moving right along. So these straight up. So I haven't even printed this, test fitted this yet. This is working off of the case dimensions, known good dimensions that we had. It's basically 20 millimeters longer. So the case has 150. The Meanwell is 170. So all we did is we used CAD to basically, these are 10 over from here to here, same on the other side. So that's your 20. We also shifted it forward as much as we can because we want to do something with the cover to make sure that some of the air coming out of this power supply is exhausted out of the cabinet the best we can. We have another fan nearby that's going to help push all that air out of the cabinet, but for efficiency I would like to dump a fair portion of this air out of the cabinet. So you basically you should mark these, but mine are pretty straightforward. You see I have all red here, and then anything with black is a ground. So anything with black on it is a ground, anything with red on it is a power. So these two wires up here are more important. Of course, reach back a million times and just make sure your power is unplugged. Okay, screw hole wise and spacing, fairly happy with it. It could shift to the back a couple more inches, millimeters, give you a little more space to get these wires through here. But also down here the wires were tight coming under, and there's a lot of space back here. There's 15 millimeters. So what I've done is I made some epoxy in wire chases that are just little hoops that are about 25 tall, 10 wide, 13 tall, with a pass through in the middle that's 8 millimeters, and we can glue them here, 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 epoxy, here, 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 and then we can run these wires through those chases. Same with these wires, which will spread them out a little bit, make it easier to get back behind here. The other possibility is just get them all the way up here tight. It's not bad the way it is, but also I didn't get my USB wire, but I think I do want to run this USB right here. But I don't want it really in front of the fan. We're going to do that. We're going to put that through the chase and pop it out down here. Alright, so it's going to take 3 hours for my 6 little chases to print. Then we'll use some 90-second epoxy, glue them in place, run our wires. Okay, what I did here was I made these little loops, and we'll run the wires through them. Basically there's a thinner edge on the bottom where it didn't need to be as thick. Coated that side with 90-second epoxy, put it on here, taped them in place. Every so often I'm just going to go ahead and give them a little push, but there's no movement, so I won't need to do that again. After that we'll just basically run the wires through each one. We got 3 sets, and big pain in the butt, but we should be able to run our camera cable through. This camera cable has been beat to shit. I probably should just get another one. It's pretty tore up from all my different ideas, but I believe we'll just kind of come here, tape it right there, and then just try to come under here, and then we'll just wrap it between these two. Alright, I need to stop messing with this. Alright, so and as you can see, I'll give you a close-up. After I adjusted my linears, tightened it up, it's hard to see, but I mean it's freaking perfect. That's what that printer does. That printer is the one that printed the black, the 2-inch black test cube that is ridiculous. That's on in some of my pictures. Alright, I epoxied these wire tie downs in place with 90-second epoxy. It takes longer than 90 seconds. Probably let them sit there a couple hours. I had an afterthought that I should have cut a slot in it instead of just making it a loop. So I cut mine and I made the adjustment in the CAD in the STL to take 3 millimeters out here so that you can just tuck the wire, you know, right down inside whichever one you want. Okay, I printed the pieces that I needed. They're little C's. I actually had to, I made them loops. I didn't like it, so I cut a C. So that's what you'll get, and that works good. And they're epoxied on there with 90-second epoxy. And when you do this, it'll be tight right here, no doubt about it. It's going to be, power supply is going to come right up into here. And also you want to make sure it doesn't really spring on the bottom, because this isn't held on the bottom, so if there's any spring, it's going to push out on it. Alright, let's see what we got. I do not like my screen cable. I'm going to see if I can get a more conventional cable, pay a little more, and get rid of that ribbon. Don't like it. So yeah, that's in there. Alright, there it goes. So yeah, that's perfect. That works good. Wow, I almost lost this one right here. So yeah, I think it's just the screws are just getting chowdered. I recommend putting a little bit of oil on these. Apparently they get turning hard again. Alright, we're not playing that game. A little bit of lube. That's good. Okay, it's up and running. Looks good. I didn't hook my 2 power supply wires up here. My Raspberry hasn't been running for a long time, and I noticed that the screw that mounts it to this rail is loose. So I'm going to take the raspberry out and tighten up that T-nut to make sure it doesn't come out, even though I'm pretty sure I put a piece of electrical tape on the back side of the raspberry. I'm going to still tighten that up so it's firm. So this is a little piece of tape I put on here for the screen cable while I was working on it. Maybe it does or doesn't need it, really. What it needs is maybe another little clamp, definite purpose, that's epoxied, but the problem here is that your cover clamp is right here. So you have to go above. Alright, let's see what we got here. So I wonder, this cover right here makes me wonder if this Ender 5 Plus is still square. We'll see. Like something happened, because alright, and put some screws in here. Now some of these covers, I don't know, I'm not a gazillion% happy with the way these covers, the tightness of these covers. I mean, they stay on and they're decent. So what I'm going to do is draw up some instructions to be able to drill a little tiny hole here, and then go through the tab and put a screw here and here. Didn't really want to do that because the screw on the bottom is a little bit of a pain in the ass to get to, but you know, for some people I think that'll be better. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and put some slits here for the non-Meanwell power supply, and then for the Meanwell we're going to take some of these vents off, extend them down here. We're going to put a little tiny scoop that kind of sticks down there to grab the air coming out of the power supply. But yeah, that's on track. Need to get, I got some plexiglass here, it's a little scratched up. I need to run it through the table saw and get it on here. But also, if you're wondering what that god awful noise is, this machine's drill extrusion with a Creality basic Ender 5 cover, which is a piece of garbage. So in order to keep my CRX hot end, did not work with the Ender 5 cover. So in short order, I mean, just for expediency, I put a turbo fan on there, which solved the problem. I have plans to re-address these hot ends and do something like kind of like very unique. I'm still trying to work it out in my head, but I want to do two hot ends instead of the 2-to-1, and I'm thinking about maybe making the bracket with air passages built into it that I hook the fan to, and then have the air come out from behind the hot end. So we'll see if I can pull that off. It may push us too far forward on the bed for it to reasonably work, but I got some other ideas that we'll try to work through. All right, everybody. I think that wraps up the Meanwell brackets, except for the cover. Good luck, enjoy.